The horrors of being a medieval plague doctor. Hey guys, tonight we slip into the grim, fog-choked streets of a medieval town where the Black Death creeps like a thief in the night. Picture yourself trudging through muddy alleys, your heavy cloak brushing against straw strewn with who knows what. The air's thick with a stench of rot and smoke, and distant church bells toll for the dead. You're no knight or merchant, you're a plague doctor, tasked with battling a disease that's mowing down entire villages. Spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this gig, and even if you do, it's a miserable ride. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're chilling tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a small town, maybe somewhere in 14th century Europe, and the plague's grip is tightening. It's 1347, and the Black Death has just begun its rampage, killing up to half the population in some areas. Historians estimate 30–50% of Europe's people perished by 1351. You've been hired by desperate town officials to stem the tide, but you're not exactly a medical genius. Most plague doctors were second-rate physicians or opportunists, not elite scholars. Your job: visit the sick, tally the dead, and maybe, just maybe, save a soul or two. The catch: you're walking into a nightmare where every cough could be your last. The streets are chaos. Families wail as carts haul bodies away, and the marketplace, once bustling, is a ghost town. You clutch a wooden cane to prod patients without touching them. Hygiene's a foreign concept here. Your outfit's straight out of a horror flick: a long, waxed coat, gloves, and boots, all meant to shield you from the miasma, the bad air everyone blames for the plague. Miasma theory, the idea that disease spreads through foul odors, was the mainstream medical belief back then, and you're stuck with it. Spoiler: it's dead wrong, but you don't know that. Germs not discovered for centuries. In 2 minutes, you'll be shocked by how your creepy mask makes things worse. For now, you're dodging piles of refuse and stray dogs gnawing on. Let's not think about it. A quirky tidbit: some towns paid you extra to burn victims' clothes, believing the smoke cleansed the air. Good luck with that logic. You pass a baker's shop, shuttered tight, and hear a faint moan from inside. Your first patient awaits, but you hesitate. The door's ajar, and a sickly sweet smell hits you. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were brave or just desperate for coin. Some say you're a hero, others a glorified gravedigger. You push open the door, heart pounding. The baker lies on a straw mat, his face pale, armpits swollen with buboes, those grotesque, egg-sized lumps that mark the plague. You've seen this before, and it never gets easier. You mutter a prayer, not because you're pious, but because it's all you've got. The room's dim, lit by a single tallow candle, and the air feels heavy, like it's pressing you down. You're supposed to diagnose him, but your tools are laughable: a urine flask to sniff for humors, and a chart of the stars. Astrology was big in medieval medicine. Some doctors swore Venus's position caused the plague. Spoiler: it didn't. Don't skip the next part, because that mask you're about to wear, it's a nightmare of its own. You kneel by the baker, avoiding his pleading eyes. His wife hovers nearby, clutching a rag to her mouth. You're not just fighting the plague. You're fighting fear, superstition, and a world that's crumbling. The baker coughs, and you flinch. Is that a fleck of spit on your glove? You're already wondering if you'll make it through the day. Welcome to your new life, Doc. It's gonna be a long, grim night. You're still in that plague-ravaged town. The baker's moans fading as you step back into the muddy street. Your next stop is a merchant's house, but first, you've got to gear up properly. You sling a leather satchel over your shoulder and pull out the most iconic and frankly creepiest part of your kit, the beak mask. This thing is your lifeline, or so you're told. It's a waxed canvas hood with glass eye holes and a long curved beak stuffed with herbs like mint and lavender. The idea the miasma won't get you if you're breathing through this floral filter. Spoiler fleas. Not bad air. Carry the plague. But you're centuries away from that bombshell. Mainstream fact, the beak mask, used widely by 1348, was designed to block disease-carrying vapors. A hallmark of medieval plague doctor attire. You slip the mask on, and instantly, your world shrinks. The eye holes are foggy, the beak's weight tugs your neck, and every breath feels like sucking air through a damp sock. It's hot, it's heavy, and it smells like a spice merchant stall got lost in a crypt. Worse, the townsfolk stare. Kids scream and run, thinking you're death itself. A quirky tidbit, some plague doctors painted their masks with red dye, believing it scared evil spirits. Now you're not just a doctor, you're a walking horror show. Historians still argue whether the mask made you more respected or just more terrifying. Some say it gave authority. Others say it marked you as cursed. In 3 minutes, you'll see why your cures are a total disaster. For now, you trudge toward the merchant's house, cane tapping the cobblestones, the mask muffles your hearing, and sweat beads under your coat. You're supposed to look confident, but you feel like a fraud. The merchant's wife greets you at the door, her eyes wide with fear. She's heard rumors about you. Some call you a savior, others a charlatan. You're not sure which is worse. Inside, the merchant's on a cot, shivering despite the fire roaring nearby. His neck swollen with buboes and black spots dot his skin. You've got to act fast, but your options are grim. You open your satchel, revealing vials of vinegar and a bundle of dried rosemary. The mask's herbs are supposed to protect you, but they're also a treatment medieval doctors burned them to purify sick rooms. You sprinkle vinegar on the floor, muttering about balancing humors. The wife watches, clutching a cross. She's praying you're legit, but you're just following orders from a medical manual written by guys who thought the moon caused fevers. Your mask's beak bobs as you lean over the merchant, checking his pulse. It's weak, and his eyes are glassy. You're supposed to inspire hope, but this guy's a goner, and you know it. Don't miss the secret revealed next. Your treatments are weirder than you think. You step back, the mask's straps digging into your scalp. The merchant's wife asks if he'll live, and you mumble something vague about God's will. Truth is, you're terrified. Every patient's a gamble, and the odds are against you. A kid peeks from the doorway, staring at your beak like you're a monster. You can't blame him. You feel monstrous, sealed in this sweaty, herb-stuffed cage. The mask was supposed to make you untouchable, but it's a lie. Fleas crawl on your cloak, unseen, and the plague's lurking closer than you know. You leave the merchant's house, promising to return. Spoiler, you won't. The street's quieter now. The church bell's silent. Your mask feels heavier, like it's pressing your fears into your skull. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting the dread it brings. A stray cat darts past, and you jump, your nerves shot. Laugh if you want. But in this world, even cats are bad omens. You've got more houses to visit, more lives to fail. The mask might hide your face, but it can't hide the truth. This job is a nightmare, and you're only getting started. You're trudging through the plague-stricken town, your beak mask chafing and your cloak heavy with damp. The merchant's house is behind you, his fate sealed, and now you're headed to a weaver's cramped hovel. Your satchel clinks with vials, but none of them hold real hope. You're expected to cure the sick, but your treatments are a bizarre mix of guesswork and tradition, most of which are about as useful as a wooden sword. Mainstream fact medieval plague doctors relied on the humoral theory aiming to balance the body's four fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, often through purging or bizarre concoctions. Spoiler, none of it stopped the plague. You knock on the weaver's door, and a gaunt woman lets you in. Her husband sprawled on a straw pallet, coughing blood. You pull out your go-to remedy, a paste of crushed emeralds and rose water smeared on his buboes. Sounds fancy. Right. It's not a quirky tidbit some doctors prescribe theriac. A syrup with over 50 ingredients, including viper flesh, believing it cured everything. You don't have theriac too expensive, but you've got a jar of toad ashes mixed with vinegar. You sprinkle it over the weaver, muttering about expelling poisons. The woman watches, desperate, but you know this is theater. The plague doesn't care about your potions. In 2 minutes, you'll be shocked by how death surrounds you. For now, you try another trick, a posy of dried herbs tied to the weaver's wrist. You tell his wife it wards off miasma, but it's just something to do. Historians still argue whether plague doctors believed their own cures or just played along for pay. Some say you're a con artist. Others, a victim of bad science. You're not sure yourself. The weaver's skin is gray, his breath shallow. You've seen this stage before. He's got hours, maybe a day. You dip a cloth in vinegar and wipe his brow. Less for medicine and more to feel useful. The room's stifling, with a single window shuttered tight. You're supposed to open it to clear the air, but the stench outside is worse. Your mask's herbs are fading, and now you're breathing your own sour breath. You glance at the weaver's wife, who's clutching a wooden saint's figure. She asks if you've cured anyone. You dodge the question with a joke. Well, my last patient's still complaining, so that's a win. She doesn't smile. Tough crowd. You're not here to make friends, but the silence stings. Don't skip the next part, because the body count's about to hit hard. You pack your satchel, promising to check back tomorrow. You won't, there's too many sick, and you're stretched thin. Stepping outside, you nearly trip over a rat scurrying past. Rats are everywhere, but no one connects them to the plague. You kick a stone in frustration, your cane tapping unevenly. Another treatment you've heard about is rubbing onions on buboes. You tried it once, the patient died, but at least he smelled like soup. You'd laugh, but the weight of failure's crushing you. Every house is a gamble, and you're losing. The weaver's hovel fades behind you as you head to the next call. Your boots squelch in mud mixed with who knows what. A kid tosses a pebble at you, shouting, "Birdman." You ignore him, but it's a reminder your cures don't just fail, they make you a target. Some townsfolk think doctors spread the plague, not fight it. You've heard whispers of a doctor in the next town who was beaten for poisoning patients. Your toad ashes and emerald paste won't save you from a mob. For now, you keep moving, one useless remedy at a time, praying you don't join the weaver in the grave. You're slogging through the plague-ravaged town, the weaver's hopeless case still gnawing at you. Your beak mask is fogging up, and your cloak soaked with sweat and drizzle. The street's a grim parade of shuttered homes and abandoned carts, but the worst sight is ahead, a pile of bodies, stacked like firewood near the churchyard. You're a plague doctor, but half your job is tallying the dead, and today's count is brutal. Mainstream fact, the Black Death. Peaking around 1347-1351 overwhelmed medieval towns, with some losing 50% of their people, forcing mass burials in plague pits. You're not just fighting disease, you're wading through its aftermath. You approach the pile, your cane sinking into the mud, flies buzz, and the stench punches through your mask's herbs. A cart driver, face wrapped in a rag, tosses another body onto the heap. You recognize the baker from yesterday, his eyes still open. A quirky tidbit, some towns paid corpse collectors to sing dirges while hauling bodies, thinking it appeased angry spirits. No singing here, just grim silence. You mark the tally on a wax tablet, 23 dead today, and it's barely noon. Historians still argue whether plague doctors like you numb to the horror or broke under it. Some say you're stoic, others say you're haunted. In 3 minutes, you'll see why townsfolk hate you. For now, you linger by the pile, your stomach churning. Each body's a failure, another patient you couldn't save. You spot a child's tiny hand sticking out, and your throat tightens. You're supposed to be professional, but this hits hard. You mutter a joke to cope. At least they're not complaining about my fees. It's weak, and no one's around to hear it. The driver grunts, pointing to a nearby house. Another patient, another chance to fail. You nod and trudge on, the weight of death clinging to you. The house belongs to a tanner, and the smell of leather mixes with sickness. Inside, he's on a bench, his wife dabbing his forehead with a cloth. His armpits are swollen, and his skin's mottled with plague marks. You pull out your vinegar vial, splashing it on the floor like it's holy water. You know it's useless, but it's protocol. The wife begs you to try something new. You hesitate, then fish out a charm, a scrap of parchment with Latin scribbled on it. Superstition's rampant. Some doctors swear charms drive out disease. You tie it to the tanner's wrist, feeling like a fraud. Don't miss the next part, because you're about to be a pariah. You check the tanner's pulse, weak but steady. You're supposed to bleed him, but his wife's watching, and you're not in the mood for a fight. Bleeding standard medieval doctors thought it purged bad humors, but it's as likely to kill as cure. You step back, promising to return. The wife's eyes follow you, a mix of hope and doubt. Outside, the body pile's grown. The driver's still there, chewing on a crust of bread. You envy his numbness. You'd trade your mask for a loaf right now, but food's scarce, and you're too busy dodging death. As you walk, a crow lands on a corpse, pecking at something you don't want to name. You shoo it away, your cane shaking. Crows are bad omens, and you're not above superstition yourself. Another joke slips out. If I get wings, I'm flying out of here. It's dark, but it keeps you sane. The church looms ahead, its bells silent now. You've got more houses to visit, more bodies to count. Every step feels heavier, like the plague's dragging you down with it. You're not just a doctor, you're death's bookkeeper, and the ledger's only getting longer. You're still trudging through this plague-soaked town, the body pile by the churchyard burned into your mind. Your beak mask is a sweaty prison, and your cane slick with mud. The tanner's house is behind you, his wife's desperate eyes lingering in your thoughts. Now, you're headed to a carpenter's home, but the streets feel hostile. Townsfolk peer from windows, their gazes sharp with fear and suspicion. You're a plague doctor, meant to save lives, but to them, you're a walking curse. Mainstream fact during the Black Death. Plague doctors were often ostracized, as terrified communities blamed them for spreading the disease or failing to stop it. You pass a shuttered tavern, where a man spits in your direction and mutters, "Deathbringer." Nice welcome. Your mask hides your scowl, but it stings. A quirky tidbit: some townsfolk believe plague doctors carried the devil's mark, and a few were even chased out with pitchforks. You're not surprised your creepy getup doesn't exactly scream, "Trust me." Historians still argue whether plague doctors were shunned more for incompetence or just bad luck. Some say you're a scapegoat, others say you earned the hate. Either way, you keep your head down and move on. In 2 minutes, you'll be shocked by the filth you're working in. For now, you reach the carpenter's door. A girl, maybe 10, cracks it open, her face pale. "He's worse," she whispers. Inside, the carpenter's on a straw mat, coughing so hard the walls seem to shake. His buboes are oozing, and the room smells like a latrine. You kneel, your cloak brushing the grimy floor, and check his fever. It's scorching. You sprinkle rosemary from your satchel, a pointless ritual, but it's all you've got. The girl watches, clutching a rag doll. You try a joke to ease the tension. Don't worry, I'm better with humans than woodwork. She doesn't laugh. Kids are tough critics. The carpenter's wife is gone dead or fled. You don't ask. You dab vinegar on his brow, muttering about miasma. The girl asks if you can save him. You want to lie, but your voice catches. I'll try, you say, hating how hollow it sounds. You tie a garlic clove around his neck, another useless charm, but it keeps hope alive. Hope's all they have, and you're running low yourself. Outside, a dog howls, and you flinch. Superstition's got you jumpy. Some say dogs sense the plague before it strikes. You'd laugh, but you're starting to believe it. Don't skip the next part, because the grime's about to get grim. You step outside, the girl's eyes burning into your back. A neighbor glares from across the street, crossing himself as you pass. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting a town that sees you as poison. Your cane taps unevenly, your boots caked with mud and worse. A woman shouts from a window, "You're killing us." You ignore her, but it's a gut punch. You've heard stories of doctors stoned in other towns, their masks smashed. Your hand tightens on your cane, not much of a weapon, but it's something. The air's thick with smoke from burning clothes. A futile attempt to cleanse the town. You're supposed to help, but every door you knock on feels like a trap. Another joke slips out, half to yourself. At least I'm not the tax collector. It's weak, but it keeps you moving. The carpenter's cough echoes in your head, a reminder of how little you can do. You're not a hero, you're a target, and the town's anger is growing. More houses wait, more glares, more failures. Your mask might shield your face, but it can't shield you from their hate. You're still weaving through the plague-choked town, the carpenter's daughter's haunted eyes stuck in your mind. Your beak mask is stifling, its herbs long faded, and your cloak's heavy with grime. The townsfolk's glares burn hotter than ever, but you've got another house to visit, a blacksmith's, just past the market square. Your job as a plague doctor isn't just about failing cures or dodging hate. It's about working in conditions so filthy, you're amazed you're still standing. Mainstream fact medieval hygiene was abysmal during the Black Death, with open sewers and unwashed bodies creating a breeding ground for disease hospitals, if you could call them that. Were often dirtier than the streets. You reach the blacksmith's door, stepping over a ditch oozing with waste. The smell claws through your mask, and you gag. Inside, the blacksmith sprawled on a bench, his massive frame shrunken by fever. The room's a swamp of straw, sweat, and spilled ale, with flies buzzing over a crust of bread. A quirky tidbit: some plague doctors use urine-soaked rags to clean wounds, thinking it neutralized bad humors. You're not that desperate yet, but your tools aren't much better. You kneel, your boots sticking to the floor, and check his bobos. They're black and weeping. Historians still argue whether plague doctors spread more disease than they cured. Some say your filthy hands were deadly. Others say you had no choice. In 3 minutes, you'll see why superstition's your biggest enemy. For now, you splash vinegar on the blacksmith's chest, the sharp tang cutting through the stench. His wife hovers, her hands trembling as she offers you a cup of sour wine. You decline. Your mask makes drinking a hassle, and you're paranoid about contamination. You pull out a wax tablet to note his symptoms, but the room's so dim you can barely see. A single rushlight flickers, casting shadows that make your beak look like a demon's snout. You try a joke to lighten the mood. Good thing he's not forging swords today. The wife stares, unamused. You're striking out tonight. You rub a paste of chalk and lavender on the blacksmith's buboes, knowing it's futile. Your satchel's running low on supplies, and the town's apothecary shut down weeks ago. The blacksmith groans, his breath rattling. You're supposed to bleed him, but the floor's already slick with who knows what, and you're not keen on adding blood to the mess. Instead, you hang a sprig of rue above his head, another superstition said to repel plague spirits. You don't believe it, but it keeps the wife calm. The room feels like a tomb, and you're itching to leave. Outside, a rat scurries across the threshold, and you kick at it, your nerves frayed. Your gloves are caked with grime, your cane's tip black with filth. Another joke slips out, half to yourself. At least I'm not the town's latrine cleaner. It's grim, but it keeps you sane. The blacksmith's cough echoes as you move on. You've got more patience, more filth, more failure waiting. Your cloak's so heavy it feels like it's dragging you to the grave. You pass a well, its water cloudy with scum. Some townsfolk drink from it, thinking it's safe. You know better, but what can you do? You're not a miracle worker. You're a man in a dirty mask, drowning in a sea of disease. The next house looms, and you brace yourself for more grime, more despair, and another chance to lose. You're still slogging through this plague-ravaged town, the blacksmith's fetid hovel fading behind you. Your beak mask is a sweaty cage, its herbs now a faint whiff, and your cloak drags like a wet shroud. The market square's a ghost town, littered with broken stalls and rotting scraps. You're headed to a widow's house next, but the real enemy isn't just the plague. It's the suffocating web of superstition that rules every move you make. Mainstream fact during the Black Death, many believed the plague was divine punishment or caused by celestial alignments, like the 1345 conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars, which doctors cited as a trigger. You're stuck navigating a world where stars and sins trump science. You reach the widow's door, its frame marked with a chalk cross a warning of infection. She opens it, eyes wild, clutching a rosary. Her son's on a cot, shivering, his neck swollen with buboes. The room's thick with incense, burned to chase away evil airs. A quirky tidbit, some townsfolk tied live chickens to buboes, thinking the bird would draw out the plague. You're not resorting to poultry, but your own cures aren't much better. You sprinkle crushed rue on the boy, muttering about miasma. The widow insists the plague's a curse from her neighbor's witchcraft. You nod, not arguing superstition's a losing battle. Historians still argue whether plague doctors leaned into these myths or quietly doubted them. Some say you're a skeptic. Others say you're swept up in the madness. In 2 minutes, you'll be shocked by how little you actually know. For now, you check the boy's pulse, weak and erratic. The widow's babbling about comets and God's wrath, and you're half listening. Your mask's eye holes fogging up. You pull out a vial of mercury ointment, a trendy remedy said to purge toxins. You rub it on the boy's buboes, knowing it's as likely to poison as heal. Mercury was a medieval favorite, but it's toxic fun fact you won't learn for centuries. The room's dim, lit by a single candle, and the air's heavy with fear. You try a joke to cut the tension. At least the stars haven't fallen yet. The widow glares. Tough room. The boy coughs, a wet, rattling sound, and you flinch. Checking your gloves for splatter. Superstition's got you paranoid too. Some say a patient's breath carries the devil. You hang a charm above the cot. A scrap of cloth soaked in camphor. It's nonsense, but it soothes the widow. She asks if you've seen the plague star in the sky, swearing it's killing her son. You've heard this before astrology's big, and every comet's a death sentence. You mumble something about Venus's position, feeling like a fraud. The truth, you're as clueless as she is, just better dressed for it. Don't skip the next part, because your training's a total joke. You step outside, the widow's prayers trailing you. The street's quiet, save for a distant wail. Your cane sinks into mud, and you nearly trip over a broken jug. Superstitions everywhere. A woman across the square tosses salt over her shoulder, eyeing you like you're the curse. You're supposed to be a doctor, but you're wading through myths thicker than the plague itself. Another joke slips out, muttered under your mask. If I cure anyone, it's by accident. It's dark, but it keeps you grounded. The widow's chalk cross glows faintly in the dusk, a reminder of how little you control. You move on, boots squelching. The air's thick with smoke from burning herbs. Another superstitious ritual. You've heard of doctors blaming Jews or lepers for the plague scapegoats for a panicked world. You don't buy it, but you keep quiet. Rocking the boat could get you killed. The widow's sun is fading, and you're powerless, caught in a web of prayers, stars, and lies. More houses wait, more myths, more failures. Your mask might hide your doubt, but it can't hide the truth in this world of superstition. You're just a man guessing in the dark. You're still trudging through the plague-infested town, the widow's frantic prayers echoing in your ears. Your beak mask is a clammy burden, its straps chafing your neck, and your cloak's caked with mud and worse. The chalk cross door fades behind you as you head toward a tailor's shop, but the weight of your job presses harder than ever. You're called a doctor, but your training, it's a patchwork of half-truths and wild guesses, barely enough to keep you from running. Mainstream fact, most plague doctors in the 14th century were not university-trained physicians, but second-rate practitioners or opportunists. Often with a little formal education, some were barbers or apothecaries thrown into the chaos. You're winging it, and it shows. You reach the tailor's shop, its sign creaking in the wind. A woman lets you in, her hands wringing a rag. Her husband's on a pallet, his face slick with sweat, buboes bulging under his jaw. The room's a mess of fabric scraps and stale bread, the air thick with a sour tang. A quirky tidbit, some doctors learned their trade from astrology charts, diagnosing patients based on the moon's phase. You're not that bad, but your knowledge comes from a dog-eared manual full of humoral nonsense. You kneel, your cane propped against the wall, and check the tailor's fever. It's blazing. Historians still argue whether plague doctors like you were clueless hacks or just trapped by bad science. Some say you're a fraud. Others say you're doing your best. In 3 minutes, you'll see why the dead are piling up faster. For now, you dig into your satchel, pulling out a jar of rose water and myrrh. You dab it on the tailor's buboes, muttering about balancing the humors. It's a script you've memorized, but it feels like reciting poetry to a corpse. The woman watches, her eyes desperate for a miracle. You wish you had one. Your training's a joke, a few weeks, shadowing a grumpy physician who swore by bleeding and purging. You've got no anatomy lessons, no germ theory, just a vague idea that bad air's the enemy. Spoiler, it's fleas. But you're centuries from that revelation. The tailor groans, and you flinch, your mask's eye holes steaming up. You try a joke to ease the tension. Good thing I'm not stitching his wounds. The woman doesn't blink. You're bombing tonight. You sprinkle dried sage on the floor. Another trick from your manual, said to cleanse the miasma. It's as useful as spitting in the wind, but it keeps her calm. You check your wax tablet, noting his symptoms: fever, swelling, delirium. You're supposed to bleed him, but your last bleeding patient died mid-treatment, and you're gun-shy. Instead, you tie a camphor-soaked cloth around his wrist. It's a guess, like everything else. Don't miss the next part, because the graveyards are calling. You step back, your boots sticking to the floor. The woman asks if you studied in Paris, like the real doctors. You dodge the question, mumbling about practical experience. Truth is, you're a glorified apprentice, thrown into this nightmare because the real doctors fled or died. Outside, a cart rumbles past, loaded with bodies. You catch a glimpse of the driver's rag-wrapped face and envy his simple job. Another joke slips out, half to yourself. At least I'm not digging the graves. It's grim, but it keeps you moving. The tailor's wife is still staring, her hope fading. You leave, promising to return. You won't, there's too many sick, and you're barely holding it together. The street's darker now, the air heavy with smoke and rot. Your training's a thin thread, fraying with every patient. You pass a shuttered apothecary, its shelves long emptied. You've heard of doctors mixing opium into cures, hoping it dulls the pain. You don't have any, and it wouldn't matter. Nothing stops the plague. The tailor's fevered face lingers, a reminder of how little you know. More houses wait, more guesses, more failures. Your mask hides your fear, but it can't hide the truth. You're a doctor in name only, and the plague's winning. You're still slogging through this plague-stricken town, the tailor's hopeless case clawing at your thoughts. Your beak mask is a stifling trap, its herbs barely masking the street's reek, and your cloak's heavy with filth. You're headed to a cobbler's house now, but the grim task ahead isn't treating the sick, it's dealing with the dead. The plague's leaving bodies faster than the town can bury them, and you're stuck managing the overflow. Mainstream fact during the Black Death. Towns dug massive plague pits to handle the corpses, with some pits in London holding hundreds of bodies, layered with lime to curb the stench. You're not just a doctor, you're a Grim Reaper's assistant. You reach the cobbler street, where a cart waits by a yawning pit. The air's thick with decay, punching through your mask. Bodies are stacked haphazardly, some wrapped in rags, others bare. A quirky tidbit in some towns. Plague doctors were paid to carve crosses into pit edges, believing it sanctified the graves. You don't bother your jobs to count and toss. You mark 17 dead on your wax tablet, including the cobbler's wife, who died last night. Her husband's inside, fading fast. Historians still argue whether plague doctors hardened to these scenes or cracked under the horror. Some say you're numb. Others say you're drowning in grief. In 2 minutes, you'll be shocked by how alone you really are. For now, you approach the pit, your boots sinking into mud. A laborer, face wrapped in cloth, heaves a body in, and it lands with a dull thud. You recognize the baker's son from days ago, his face gray. Your stomach twists, but you keep moving. The cobbler's door is ajar, and you step inside. He's on a straw mat, buboes black and oozing, his breath a faint wheeze. You sprinkle vinegar on the floor, a pointless ritual, and check his pulse. It's barely there. His daughter, a teenager, watches from the corner, her eyes hollow. You try a joke to break the silence. At least his shoes won't wear out now. She doesn't flinch. Tough crowd. You pull out a jar of myrrh paste, smearing it on the cobbler's buboes. It's a guess, like all your cures, and it won't save him. You're supposed to note his condition, but your tablet's smudged with grime, and the candle's too dim to write. The daughter mutters about God's judgment, and you nod, too tired to argue. Superstitions everywhere, but you're focused on the pit outside. You'll be back here soon, adding the cobbler to the tally. The room feels like a coffin, and your mask straps dig deeper, a reminder of your own fragility. You're not immune, and every body you toss could be a preview of your fate. Don't skip the next part, because your world's about to get lonelier. You step outside, the pit's stench hitting like a wave. The laborer's gone, leaving you alone with the dead. You grab a rag-wrapped arm and drag a body to the edge. Your gloves slick with sweat. It's heavy, and your back aches, but you shove it in, muttering a half-hearted prayer. Another joke slips out, whispered to the dark. If I fall in, don't wake me. It's bleak, but it keeps you sane. The pit's nearly full, and the town's running out of space. You've heard of villages burning their dead when pits overflowed grim, but cleaner than this mess. The cobbler's daughter calls you back inside. Her father's worse, and she's begging for a charm. You tie a garlic string around his neck, knowing it's useless. She thanks you, and it stings her faith in you is a lie you can't escape. Outside, the pit looms, a black mouth waiting for more. Your cane's tip is caked with dirt, your hands trembling. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting a tide of death that's pulling you under. More houses wait, more bodies, more pits. Your mask might hide your fear, but it can't hide the truth you're burying a town, one corpse at a time. You're still dragging yourself through this plague-ravaged town. The cobbler's pit and his daughter's hollow eyes heavy on your mind. Your beak mask is a sweaty cage, its herbs long useless, and your cloak stiff with grime. The street's a maze of shuttered homes and abandoned carts, and you're headed to a miller's house now. But the plague's not just killing bodies, it's tearing apart families, and you're forced to walk away from your own. Mainstream fact during the Black Death, plague doctors often isolated themselves to avoid infecting loved ones, sometimes abandoning their families entirely to work in stricken towns. You're alone, and it's eating you alive. You approach the miller's door, stepping over a broken flour sack. The air's thick with rot and smoke, clawing through your mask. Inside, the miller's on a bench, his buboes swollen, his wife and son hovering nearby. The room's dim, lit by a flickering rushlight, and the floor's littered with straw and mouse droppings. A quirky tidbit some doctors left coded notes for their families, scratched on church walls, hoping to say goodbye without breaking quarantine. You've got no one to write to your wife, and kids are miles away, and you're forbidden to return. Historians still argue whether plague doctors chose this isolation or were coerced. Some say you're selfless. Others say you're trapped by duty. In 3 minutes, you'll see why the church is your next hurdle. For now, you kneel by the miller, your cane propped against the wall. His fever's raging, and you dab rose water on his brow. A gesture more for his wife than him. You're supposed to check his humors, but your urine flask's cracked, and you're too tired to care. The sun, barely 10, stares at your beak like you're a monster. You try a joke to soften the mood. Don't worry, I'm not milling your dad. He blinks, unmoved. Kids are brutal. You sprinkle sage on the floor, muttering about miasma, but your heart's not in it. You're thinking of your own son, his face fading with every day you're gone. The miller's wife asks if you've seen your family. The question's a knife, and you dodge it, mumbling about serving the town. Truth is, you haven't seen them in months, and letters are a risk paper might carry the plague. You tie a camphor charm around the miller's neck, knowing it's useless. His wife's eyes are wet, and you wonder if she's lost someone too. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting the ache of absence. Your family's a ghost, and every patient's face reminds you of what you've left behind. The room feels smaller, the air heavier, like it's pressing you down. Don't miss the next part, because faith's about to complicate everything. You step outside, the miller's cough fading behind you. A stray dog snarls, and you shoo it with your cane, your nerves frayed. You've heard of doctors sneaking home at night, only to find their families dead. You push the thought away, but it's a splinter in your mind. Another joke slips out, muttered to the empty street. At least I'm not writing my will yet. It's dark, but it keeps you moving. The miller's house is one of dozens, and you're running out of strength. Your mask hides your grief, but it can't hide the truth. You're a stranger to your own life now. You pass a boarded-up bakery. It's oven cold. You used to bring your daughter bread from a place like this. Her laugh brighter than any cure. Now, you're a shadow, dodging memories as much as the plague. The miller's son looked like her, and it's wrecking you. You've got no choice but to keep going. More houses, more patience, more loss. Your satchel's lighter, your supplies dwindling, but the weight of being alone is heavier than ever. The town's a graveyard, and your family's a dream you can't reach. You grip your cane tighter, forcing yourself forward, one lonely step at a time. You're still trudging through this plague-devastated town, the miller's family and your own distant kin haunting your thoughts. Your beak mask chafes, its herbs of faint memory, and your cloak's a sodden weight. The street's a grim gauntlet of boarded windows and scattered bones, and you're headed to a butcher's house now. But the plague's not your only foe. The church's iron grip on this town is strangling your work, dictating cures as if priests know more than you. Mainstream fact during the Black Death, the Catholic Church held immense power, often blaming the plague on sin and pushing religious remedies like prayer and penance over medical ones. You're caught in their web, and it's suffocating. You reach the butcher's door, marked with a crude cross. A priest stands outside, sprinkling holy water and chanting. He eyes your mask like you're a heretic, and you nod politely, keeping your distance. Inside, the butcher's on a straw pallet, his buboes oozing, his wife kneeling in prayer. The room's heavy with incense, the church's favorite cure. A quirky tidbit: some priests sold plague relics, splinters of saints' bones claiming they warded off disease. The butcher's wife clutches one, and you don't comment. You kneel, your cane sinking into the grimy floor, and check his pulse. It's faint. Historians still argue whether plague doctors clashed with clergy or just played along. Some say you're a rebel. Others say you're cowed by faith. In 2 minutes, you'll be shocked by the church's wild demands. For now, you pull out a vial of vinegar, splashing it on the butcher's chest. It's your usual routine, but the wife insists you pray first. You mumble a Latin verse, half remembered from your apprentice days, feeling like a fraud. The church says the plague's God's wrath, and your potions are borderline blasphemy. You'd argue, but a doctor in the next town was flogged for defying divine will. You smear mirror paste on the butcher's buboes, knowing it's useless. The wife's relic glints in the candlelight, and you wonder how much she paid for that scam. You try a joke to cut the tension, hope that saint's working overtime. She doesn't smile. Rough night. The priest steps inside, his robes brushing the filthy straw. He declares the butcher must confess before treatment. Delaying you, you grit your teeth behind your mask, its eye holes fogging up. You're supposed to balance humors, not souls, but the church's rules are law. The butcher's too weak to speak, so the priest anoints him with oil, droning on about salvation. You wait, your satchel growing heavy. You've heard of priests banning bloodletting as unnatural, forcing doctors to sneak treatments at night. You're not that bold yet. You tie a rue sprig above the cot, a nod to both medicine and superstition, hoping it appeases everyone. Don't skip the next part, because blood's about to flow, literally. You step back, the priest chants, grating on your nerves. The butcher's wife begs you to save him, but her eyes flick to the priest, like he's the real authority. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting a system that trusts relics over reason. Outside, a bell tolls, calling the faithful to yet another mass. You've seen churches packed with the sick, spreading the plague faster. Another joke slips out, muttered under your breath. If prayer's cured, I'd be out of a job. It's bitter, but it keeps you sane. The butcher's fading, and you're powerless, trapped between a dying man and a dogma that's killing him faster. You leave, the priest's glare burning into your back. The street's darker, the air thick with incense and rot. You pass a shrine, candles flickering for the dead. The church is everywhere, its rules chaining your hands. You've got more houses to visit, more patience to lose, and the clergy's watching your every move. Your cane taps unevenly, your gloves sticky with grime. The butcher's relic flashes in your mind, a useless trinket in a useless fight. You're not a doctor, you're a pawn in a holy war, and the plague's the only one winning. You're still slogging through this plague-ravaged town, the butcher's incense-choked room, and the priest's glare lingering like a bad dream. Your beak mask is a sweaty prison, its herbs useless, and your cloak stiff with filth. The street's a grim maze of shuttered doors and scattered ashes. And you're headed to a baker's hovel now. Your job's already a nightmare, but the treatments you're forced to use, like leeches and bloodletting, make it feel like you're killing faster than curing. Mainstream fact medieval doctors relied heavily on bloodletting, believing it purged corrupt humors, a practice rooted in humoral theory that often weakened or killed plague patients. You're stuck with it, and it's gruesome. You reach the baker's door, its frame splintered from desperate visitors. A woman lets you in, her face gaunt. Her brother's on a cot, his bubo's black, his skin clammy. The room's a swamp of straw and stale dough, lit by a single tallow candle. A quirky tidbit: some doctors use leeches blessed by priests, thinking holy worms worked better. You're not that pious. But you've got a jar of slimy leeches in your satchel. You kneel, your cane propped against the wall, and check the baker's pulse, weak and erratic. Historians still argue whether bloodletting was malpractice or just blind faith in bad science. Some say you're a butcher. Others say you're a victim of your time. In 3 minutes, you'll see why you're starting to crack. For now, you pull out a small blade, its edge dulled from overuse. The woman watches, clutching a rag, as you slice the baker's arm, aiming for a vein. Blood trickles, dark and sluggish, into a chipped bowl. You're supposed to balance his humors, but he's already half dead. And this feels like torture. You place a leech on his bubo, its suckers latching on. The woman gasps, and you mutter about drawing poison. Truth is, you're guessing, and the baker's fading fast. You try a joke to ease the tension. At least the leeches work for free. She doesn't blink. Tough crowd. The room's stifling, your mask's eye holes fogging up. You add another leech, watching it swell with blood. Your manual swears this helps, but every patient you've bled looks worse after. You've heard of doctors draining quarts of blood, leaving corpses paler than snow. You stop at a few ounces, tying a rag around the baker's arm. The woman asks if he'll live. You dodge with a vague God's will. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting a system that demands you harm to heal. The leeches squirm, and you shudder, wondering if you're the real parasite here. Don't miss the next part, because your own fear's about to spike. You step back, the bowl of blood sloshing, the woman staring, her hope crumbling. You sprinkle vinegar on the floor, a ritual you barely believe in, and pack your satchel. Outside, a cart rumbles past, piled with bodies. You catch a glimpse of the cobbler's cloak from yesterday, and your stomach twists. Another joke slips out, muttered to the dark. If I bleed myself, maybe I'll feel better. It's grim, but it keeps you moving. The baker's hovel fades as you trudge on, your hands sticky with blood and grime. Your mask hides your doubt, but it can't hide the truth. Every cut you make feels like a step toward the grave. You pass a well. Its water murky. Some townsfolk swear it's healing, but you've seen the sick drinking from it, only to die faster. Bloodletting's no better, and you're running out of excuses. The baker's leeches are still in your mind. They're wriggling a sick mirror of your own helplessness. More houses wait, more veins to open, more lives to drain. Your cane sinks into the mud, your gloves stained red. You're not a doctor, you're a bleeder, caught in a cycle of harm dressed as help. and the plague's laughing at your knife. You're still dragging your boots through this plague-soaked town, the baker's bloodied arm and his sister's desperate stare gnawing at you. Your beak mask is a clammy torment, its herbs long dead, and your cloak's a filthy anchor. The street's a grim tableau of shuttered homes and scattered bones, and you're headed to a weaver's shack now. But the plague's not just killing patients, it's creeping into your own mind, and the fear of catching it yourself is starting to choke you. Mainstream fact plague doctors faced high mortality rates, with many succumbing to the disease due to constant exposure. Some estimates suggest up to 40% of doctors died during the Black Death's peak. You're not immune, and you know it. You reach the Weaver's door, its hinges creaking as a boy lets you in. The Weaver's on a straw mat, his buboes oozing, his breath a wet rattle. The room's a haze of smoke and sweat, lit by a flickering rushlight. A quirky tidbit: some doctors wore amulets of toad skin, believing it absorbed plague vapors. You've got no amulets, but you're checking your gloves obsessively. Terrified of a tear, you kneel, your cane sinking into the grimy floor, and dab vinegar on the Weaver's brow. His eyes are glassy, and you flinch at his cough, your heart pounding. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were reckless or resigned. Some say you're brave. Others say you're too scared to run. In 2 minutes, you'll be shocked by how fear's twisting your every move. For now, you pull out a jar of myrrh paste, smearing it on the Weaver's buboes. It's useless, but it's protocol, and you're clinging to routine. The boy watches, clutching a wooden spindle, and asks if you're sick too. The question's a dart, and you mutter, "Not yet," behind your mask. Truth is, you are checking yourself constantly. Every itch, every ache feels like the plague's first kiss. You've seen doctors drop mid-rounds, their buboes hidden until it was too late. Your mask's supposed to protect you, but it's a lie. And the fleas crawling on your cloak don't care. The Weaver groans, and you jump, your mask's eye holes fogging up. You try a joke to steady yourself. "If I catch it, I'll bill the plague." The boy doesn't blink, and you feel foolish. You tie a garlic string around the Weaver's neck, a charm you don't believe in, but it keeps the boy calm. Your hands shake as you pack your satchel, and you're hyper-aware of your own skin. Did that flea just bite you? You've heard of doctors burning their clothes nightly to kill fleas, but you've got no spares. The room feels like a trap, and your fear's louder than the Weaver's cough. Don't skip the next part, because the town's about to turn on you. You step outside, the Weaver's shack fading into the dusk. A rat scurries past, and you kick at it, your nerves shot. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting the terror that's clawing your insides. Another joke slips out, whispered to the empty street. "If I die, at least I won't owe rent." It's bleak, but it keeps you moving. You pass a boarded-up tavern, its sign swinging in the wind. You've seen colleagues collapse, their masks no shield against the inevitable. Your gloves are fraying, your boots soaked with who knows what, and every step feels like a gamble. The Weaver's boy lingers in your mind, his question echoing, "Are you sick?" You don't know, and that's the worst part. You're supposed to save lives, but you're terrified of losing your own. The air's thick with smoke and rot, and your mask straps dig deeper, a reminder of your fragility. More houses wait, more patience, more chances to catch the plague. Your cane taps unevenly, your breath shallow. You're not a hero, you're a man staring down death, and the fear's heavier than any mask. You're still slogging through this plague-ravaged town, the Weaver's shack and his boy's piercing question, "Are you sick?" clawing at your nerves. Your beak mask is a suffocating weight, its herbs a distant memory, and your cloak's a grimy shroud. The street's a desolate stretch of mud and shuttered doors, and you're headed to a tanner's house now. But the plague's not your only enemy. The town's anger is boiling over, and you're a prime target for their rage. Mainstream fact: during the Black Death, mobs sometimes attacked plague doctors, blaming them for spreading the disease or failing to stop it. Records from 1348 show doctors lynched in cities like Marseille. You're walking a tightrope, and it's fraying fast. You approach the tanner's door, dodging a pile of rotting hides. The air's thick with tannin and decay, seeping through your mask. A crowd's gathered nearby, muttering, their eyes sharp with suspicion. A man shouts, "You're poisoning us," and hurls a stone. It grazes your cloak, and you freeze, gripping your cane. A quirky tidbit: some townsfolk believe doctors smeared plague pus on doorknobs to spread the disease, a wild conspiracy that got more than a few killed. You're no poisoner, but reason's scarce here. Historians still argue whether plague doctors face mobs out of guilt or just bad timing. Some say you're a scapegoat. Others say your failures fan the flames. In 3 minutes, you'll see why survival is getting tougher. For now, you knock, and the tanner's wife cracks the door, her face pale. Inside, the tanner's on a bench, buboes black, his breath a faint wheeze. The room's a haze of smoke and leather, lit by a dying candle. You kneel, your boots sticking to the floor, and dab vinegar on his brow. The wife's trembling, glancing at the door like she expects trouble. You pull out a jar of chalk paste, smearing it on the tanner's buboes. It's useless, but it's protocol, and you're clinging to routine. The crowd's murmurs grow louder outside, and your pulse spikes. You try a joke to calm yourself. "Good thing I'm not tanning their hides." The wife doesn't blink. Rough night. You tie a rue sprig above the tanner's cot, muttering about miasma. The wife asks if you're one of the bad ones. The question stings, but you mumble, just trying to help. Truth is, you're terrified. Every house feels like a trap, and the mob's itching for blood. You've heard of doctors stoned for cursing patients, their masks smashed, your gloves are frayed, and you're hyper-aware of every sound: a creak, a shout. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting a town that sees you as the enemy. The tanner's fading, and you're powerless, caught between a dying man and a crowd that wants you dead. Don't miss the next part, because hunger's about to hit hard. You step outside, the crowd parting but still glaring. A woman spits, and you dodge, your cane shaking. The tanner's wife bolts the door behind you, like you're the plague itself. Another joke slips out, whispered to the dark, "If they kill me, at least I'm off duty." It's grim, but it keeps you moving. You pass a burned out shop, its timbers charred. You've seen mobs torch doctors' homes, blaming them for God's wrath. Your satchel's heavy, your steps unsteady. The tanner's buboes flash in your mind, a reminder of your failure and the mob's growing bolder. The street's darker now, the air thick with smoke and fear. You're not a healer, you're a target, and every glance feels like a blade. You grip your cane tighter, scanning for escape routes. The crowd's still there, trailing at a distance, their whispers like a noose tightening. More houses wait, more patience, more chances to be blamed. Your mask hides your panic, but it can't hide the truth. You're not just dodging the plague, you're dodging a town that's ready to snap, and you're running out of places to hide. You're still trudging through this plague-stricken town, the tanner's mob and their hurled stones still rattling your nerves. Your beak mask is a sweaty trap, its herbs long gone, and your cloak's a filthy weight dragging you down. The street's a grim stretch of mud and broken carts, and you're headed to a cooper's house now. But the plague's not just killing bodies, it's starving the town, and you're barely eating yourself. Mainstream fact: the Black Death disrupted food supplies, with crops rotting in fields and markets collapsing. By 1349, some towns faced famine. As labor shortages crippled agriculture, you're hungry. and it's making everything worse. You kneel, your cane sinking into the grimy floor, and check the Cooper's pulse, faint and erratic. Historians still argue whether starvation killed more than the plague. In some towns, some say hunger weakened the sick, others say it was just another nail in the coffin. In 2 minutes, you'll be shocked by how hunger's breaking you. For now, you dab vinegar on the Cooper's brow, a ritual you barely believe in. The woman watches, clutching a rag, and offers you a sip of brackish water. You decline your mask's a hassle, and you're paranoid about contamination. Your stomach's growling, though, and it's hard to focus. You smear myrrh paste on the Cooper's buboes, knowing it's useless. The woman's so thin, her cheekbones jut like blades, and you wonder when she last ate. You try a joke to lighten the mood. At least the plague's not charging rent. She doesn't flinch. Tough crowd. The Cooper groans, and you flinch, checking your gloves for tears. You're supposed to bleed him, but he's too weak, and you're too tired. Instead, you tie a garlic string around his neck, a charm to keep the woman calm. Your own hunger's a dull ache, sapping your strength. You've been scavenging stale bread, sour ale, but the town's markets are empty, and farmers stopped coming weeks ago. You've heard of doctors stealing from dead patients' homes, but you're not there yet. The room feels like a cage, and your mask straps dig deeper, a reminder of your own frailty. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting to stay upright. Your satchel's lighter, your supplies dwindling, but hunger's heavier than any load. The Cooper's sunken face lingers, a mirror of your own slow collapse. The street's quieter now, the air thick with smoke and despair. You're not a healer, you're a ghost, scavenging scraps to survive another day. Your cane taps unevenly, your boots caked with mud. You've got more houses to visit, more patients to fail, and no food to fuel you. The woman's rag flashes in your mind, clutched like a lifeline. You're clutching your own routine, duty, fear, but it's slipping. Hunger's a new enemy, and it's gnawing at your bones. You grip your cane tighter, forcing yourself forward, one starving step at a time. You're still dragging your feet through this plague-ravaged town, the Cooper's gaunt face and your own gnawing hunger burning in your gut. Your beak mask is a sweaty cage, its herbs long faded, and your cloak's a grimy anchor, the streets a desolate stretch of mud and broken barrels. And you're headed to a potter's shack now. The plague's bad enough, but now you're dodging rival doctors, charlatans, and quacks, stealing your patients and making you look worse. Mainstream fact during the Black Death. Unqualified healers flooded towns, peddling fake cures like unicorn horn or blessed water, often outnumbering legitimate doctors. You're barely legit yourself, but these rivals are a new low. You reach the potter's door, its frame chipped and unmarked. A woman lets you in, her eyes darting nervously. The potter's on a straw mat, buboes swollen, his breath a faint wheeze. The room's cluttered with cracked pots, lit by a single rushlight. A quirky tidbit, some charlatan sold plague wine, spiked with opium, claiming it cured the sick, mostly. It just made them sleep through death. You've heard a rival's been here, promising miracles with a holy elixir. The woman's skeptical now, and you're on thin ice. Historians still argue whether rival doctors helped or hurt more. Some say they gave hope, others say they spread chaos. You're leaning toward chaos. In 3 minutes, you'll see why these quacks are your nightmare. For now, you kneel, your cane sinking into the grimy floor, and dab vinegar on the potter's brow. The woman watches, clutching a clay shard like a talisman. You pull out a jar of myrrh paste, smearing it on the potter's buboes. It's your usual routine, but she's comparing you to the miracle man who left yesterday. You've seen his type, flashy robes, fake Latin, and a wagon full of tinted water. You try a joke to win her over. My cures don't sparkle, but they're honest. She doesn't blink. Tough crowd. The Potter coughs, and you flinch, checking your gloves for splatter. You tie a rue sprig above his cot, muttering about miasma. The woman says the rival swore by a moon-blessed salve that failed. You nod. Hiding your relief, she's giving you a chance. But you're not much better. Your training's a patchwork, and your cures are guesses. You've heard of quacks chased out of towns, their carts burned. You're not that hated yet, but the Potter's fading, and if he dies, you're the one she'll blame. The room feels smaller. Your mask straps digging deeper. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting for your shaky reputation. Don't miss the next part, because the plague's about to surge again. You step outside, the Potter's shack fading into the dusk. A kid throws a pebble, shouting, "Fake doctor." You ignore him, but it stings. Another joke slips out, muttered to the dark. At least I'm not selling stardust. It's grim, but it keeps you moving. You pass a boarded up stall, where a rival's poster flaps in the wind, promising eternal health. You've seen his patients in the pits, their coins in his pocket. Your satchel's heavy, your steps unsteady. The woman's shard lingers in your mind, a fragile hope you can't match. The street's darker, the air thick with smoke and rot. You're not a healer, you're a target, caught between dying patients and slick con men. You spot the rival's wagon in the distance, surrounded by a small crowd. He's waving a vial, his voice loud with promises. You grip your cane tighter, resisting the urge to confront him. You've got no proof, just vinegar and failure. More houses wait, more patience, more chances to lose to quacks. Your mask hides your anger, but it can't hide the truth you're barely holding ground. And the rivals are stealing what little you have left. You're still slogging through this plague-ravaged town. The Potter's shaky trust and that rival quack's flashy wagon gnawing at your pride. Your beak mask is a stifling trap. Its herbs long gone, and your cloak's a filthy weight. The street's a grim stretch of mud and broken dreams. And you're headed to a brewer's hovel now. The plague's not slowing down. It's surging in relentless waves. And you're drowning in its tide. Mainstream fact, the Black Death struck in multiple outbreaks, with second and third waves in the 1360s and 1370s killing those who survived the first. As weakened towns couldn't recover, you're stuck in this endless grind, and relief's nowhere in sight. You reach the brewer's door, its wood warped from damp. A woman lets you in, her hands trembling. The brewer's on a straw mat, bubo's black, his skin mottled with plague marks. The room reeks of sour ale and sweat, lit by a single candle. A quirky tidbit, some doctors prescribed ale mixed with crushed pearls, swearing it fortified the blood. You've got no pearls, just vinegar, and you're too tired to pretend it works. You kneel, your cane sinking into the grimy floor, and check his pulse barely there. Historians still argue whether plague doctors gave up during later waves, or kept fighting. Some say you're broken. Others say you're stubborn. You're not sure yourself. In 2 minutes, you'll see why your spirit's cracking. For now, you dab vinegar on the brewer's brow, the sharp tang cutting through the stench. The woman watches, clutching a rag, her eyes hollow from watching others die. You smear myrrh paste on the brewer's buboes, knowing it's futile. This isn't your first wave you've seen the plague ebb, only to roar back stronger. The town's half empty, survivors too weak to bury the dead. You tie a garlic string around the brewer's neck, a charm to keep the woman calm. She asks if it's ever going to end. You mumble, maybe, hating the lie. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting a beast that won't quit. The brewer coughs, a wet rattle, and you flinch, checking your gloves for tears. Your mask's eye holes are fogging up, and the room feels like a tomb. You try a joke to steady yourself. At least the ale's still flowing. The woman doesn't blink. Tough crowd. You've lost count of the houses, the faces, the pits. Every wave brings new sick, new dead, and you're running on fumes. You've heard of towns wiped out entirely, their names erased. This one's close, and you're not sure you'll outlast it. Your hands shake as you pack your satchel, the weight of endless failure crushing you. Don't skip the next part, because despair's about to hit harder. You step outside, the brewer's hovel fading into the dark. A cart rumbles past, piled with bodies, their limbs dangling. You recognize the weaver's cloak from days ago, and your stomach twists. Another joke slips out, whispered to the empty street. If I survive, I'm brewing my own cure. It's bleak, but it keeps you moving. You pass a burned out church, its steeple charred. The plague's second wave hit while they prayed, and no one's rebuilt. Your satchel's nearly empty, your strength fading. The woman's question, will it end, echoes, unanswered. The street's quieter, the air thick with smoke and rot. You're not a doctor, you're a ghost, stumbling through a town that's dying faster than you can count. You grip your cane tighter, your boots caked with mud. You've got more houses to visit, more patience to lose, and the plague's laughing at your effort. The brewer's mottled skin lingers, a reminder of this relentless wave. You're not sure what's worse, the disease or the grind of facing it again and again. Your mask hides your exhaustion, but it can't hide the truth. You're fighting a war with no end, and you're losing ground every day. You're still trudging through this plague-ravaged town, the brewer's hopeless case and the endless waves of death grinding you down. Your beak mask is a clammy prison, its herbs a faint ghost, and your cloak's a sodden weight. The street's a desolate stretch of mud and shattered hopes, and you're headed to a carpenter's hovel now. The plague's toll isn't just physical, it's breaking your mind, and despair's sinking in like a slow poison. Mainstream fact, the Black Death's psychological impact was brutal, with chroniclers like Boccaccio noting widespread despair and mental collapse among survivors, including doctors. By the late 1340s, you're teetering on the edge, and it's getting harder to hold on. You reach the carpenter's door, its frame splintered. A girl, maybe 12, lets you in, her eyes dull with grief. The carpenter's on a straw mat, buboes oozing, his breath a faint rattle. The room's a haze of smoke and sawdust, lit by a dying rushlight. A quirky tidbit, some doctors carried memento mori trinkets, tiny skulls carved from bone to remind them of death's grip. You've got no trinket, but every patient's face is reminder enough. You kneel, your cane sinking into the grimy floor, and dab vinegar on the carpenter's brow. Historians still argue whether plague doctors succumbed to despair or found grim resolve. Some say you're shattered. Others say you're too stubborn to quit. In 3 minutes, you'll see why hope's slipping away. For now, you smear myrrh paste on the carpenter's buboes, your hands moving on autopilot. The girl watches, clutching a wooden peg, and asks if anyone survived. The question's a blade, and you mutter, "Some do," though you've seen none. You've lost count of the dead hundreds, maybe more, and the living are just waiting their turn. You tie a rue sprig above the cot, a charm you don't believe in, but it keeps her quiet. Your mask's eye holes are fogging up, and the room feels like it's closing in. You try a joke to shake the gloom. At least he's not building his own coffin. The girl doesn't blink. Tough crowd. The carpenter's cough jars you, and you flinch, checking your gloves for splatter. Your mind's unraveling. Every ache feels like the plague. Every shadow a pit waiting to swallow you. You've seen colleagues flee. Others drink themselves numb. You're still here, but you're not sure why. The girl's peg glints in the candlelight, and you wonder if she's carving her father's name somewhere. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting the darkness creeping into your soul. You've stopped praying, stopped hoping, just moving from house to house like a ghost. Your satchel is nearly empty, your strength a flicker, despair's heavier than any mask. Don't miss the next part, because your legacy's about to take a hit. You step outside, the carpenter's hovel fading into the dark. A crow lands on a broken fence, its caw like a taunt. You shoo it, your nerves shot. Another joke slips out, whispered to the empty street. If I go mad, at least I'll fit in. It's grim, but it keeps you moving. You pass a shuttered forge, its anvil silent. You've heard of doctors writing letters to no one, spilling their fears on parchment they'll burn. You're too tired for that. The girl's question, has anyone survived, echoes, unanswered. You're not sure you're surviving either. The street's quieter, the air thick with rot and despair. You're not a healer, you're a shell, stumbling through a town that's more graveyard than home. Your cane taps unevenly, your boots caked with mud. You've got more houses to visit, more patience to lose, and no strength to carry on. The carpenter's dull eyes linger, a mirror of your own fading spark. You grip your cane tighter, forcing yourself forward, but every step feels like sinking. Your mask hides your breaking heart, but it can't hide the truth. You're not fighting the plague anymore. You're just trying to outlast it, and you're losing. You're still dragging yourself through this plague-ravaged town, the carpenter's hollow eyes and your own creeping despair weighing heavier than ever. Your beak mask is a sweaty torment, its herbs long useless, and your cloak's a grimy shroud. The street's a bleak stretch of mud and abandoned dreams. And you're headed to a tailor's shack now. The plague's left you battered, but worse, it cemented your legacy as a failure, a quack mocked by the few who'll survive. Mainstream fact plague doctors were often derided as ineffective, with 14th century chronicles like those of Matteo Villani calling them useless or greedy. Their bizarre treatments fueling distrust. You're not just fighting disease, you're fighting a reputation that's already in tatters. You reach the tailor's door, its stitches fraying like the town itself. A woman lets you in, her face etched with exhaustion. The tailor's on a straw mat, buboes black, his breath a faint wheeze. The room's a mess of fabric scraps and stale air, lit by a single rushlight, a quirky tidbit. Some doctors were nicknamed Beakmen in jest, their masks mocked in tavern songs that outlived them. You feel the sting of that label, even now. You kneel, your cane sinking into the grimy floor, and dab vinegar on the tailor's brow. Historians still argue whether plague doctors deserve their bad rap. Some say you're scapegoats for a hopeless fight. Others say your quackery earned the scorn. In 2 minutes, you'll see why your name's a punchline. For now, you smear myrrh paste on the tailor's bobos, your hands moving mechanically. The woman watches, her eyes dull, and mutters about a real doctor who promised gold dust cures. You've heard it before. Your rival's lies make you look worse. You tie a garlic string around the tailor's neck, a charm you know is pointless, but it's all she's got. Your mask's eye holes fog up, and the room feels like a coffin. You try a joke to cut the gloom. At least I'm not sewing his wound shut. She doesn't blink. Tough crowd. The tailor's cough jars you, and you flinch, checking your gloves for tears. You're not just a failure, you're a symbol of it. Your beak mask a joke to kids who'll sing about you long after you're gone. You've seen graffiti on walls, beakmen bring death. It's unfair, but you've got no defense. Your cures don't work, and the pits keep growing. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting a legacy that's already written you off as a fool. The woman's stare burns, and you wonder if she's heard the songs. Your satchel's empty, your strength a flicker. You're not a doctor, you're a ghost, haunting a town that laughs through its tears. Don't miss the next part, because you're about to fade into legend. You step outside, the tailor's shack fading into the dark. A kid tosses a pebble, shouting. Quack, you ignore him, but it cuts deep. Another joke slips out, whispered to the empty street. If I'm a quack, at least I'm the best dressed. It's grim, but it keeps you moving. You pass a burned out shop, its sign charred. You've heard of doctors fleeing, their names cursed in ballads. You're still here, but for what? The woman's muttered doubt, real doctor echoes. A reminder of your place in this story. You're not a hero, you're a punchline. The street's quieter, the air thick with rot and mockery. You grip your cane tighter, your boots caked with mud. You've got one last house to visit, one last chance to be more than a jest. The tailor's black buboes linger, a mirror of your own blackened reputation. You're not sure what's worse, the plague, or the laughter that'll outlive it. Your mask hides your shame, but it can't hide the truth you're a plague doctor, and history's already decided you're a failure, whether you save a soul or not. You're still trudging through this plague-ravaged town, the tailor's bitter doubt and your mock legacy stinging like an open wound. Your beak mask is a clammy cage, its herbs long gone, and your cloak's a filthy weight. The street's a final gauntlet of mud and ghosts, and you're headed to one last house, a widow's shack. The plague's broken you, body and soul, and now you're fading into history, leaving only eerie legends of a bird-masked failure. Mainstream fact-plagued doctors, despite their efforts, became mythic figures by the 15th century, their beak masks immortalized in art and folklore as symbols of death's shadow. You're not a man anymore, you're a story, and it's not a kind one. You reach the widow's door, its frame warped and unmarked. She lets you in, her eyes hollow, her hands clutching a rosary. Her son's on a straw mat, bubo's black, his breath a faint whisper, the room's a dim haze of smoke and sorrow, lit by a single candle. A quirky tidbit, some towns wove tales of plague ghosts, masked doctors wandering forever, seeking patients they couldn't save. You feel like one already. You kneel, your cane sinking into the grimy floor, and dab vinegar on the boy's brow. Historians still argue whether plague doctors were forgotten or mythologized. Some say you vanished. Others say your mask became a grim icon. In 3 minutes, you'll fade into a whisper. For now, you smear myrrh paste on the boy's buboes, your hands trembling. The widow watches, her prayers a low drone, and you tie a garlic string around his neck, a final, futile charm. Your mask's eye holes fog up, and the room feels like a grave. You try a joke, your last, if I'm a ghost, I'm a tired one. She doesn't blink, and you don't care. You've given everything your family, your hope, your name, and it's not enough. The boy is fading, and you're fading with him into a tale told to scare children. You're not just fighting the plague, you're fighting to be more than a shadow. The widow's rosary clicks, and you flinch, checking your gloves one last time. You've seen too many die, too many pits, too many mobs. Your legacy's set a quack in a beak. Mocked by history, you pack your satchel, its weight lighter than your heart. The widow asks if you'll return. You nod, knowing you won't. This town's done, and so are you. Outside, the street's silent, the air thick with rot. You're not a doctor, you're a myth, slipping into the dark. The widow's son lingers, his breath a faint echo of your own. You grip your cane, forcing one last step, but it's over. You're gone. As the widow's shack fades into the night, you feel the world soften, its edges blurring like a dream. The mud under your boots grows distant, the stench of rot easing into a quiet hum. You're no longer trudging, just drifting, your mask a memory, your cloak a whisper. The town's cries fade, replaced by a gentle stillness, like a fan's soft whir in a darkened room. You did what you could, even if history won't sing your praises. The plague's shadow lifts, and you're free, slipping into a calm where no pits wait, no mobs shout. Let the legends spin their tales tonight. You rest, cradled in the hush of a world at peace. Sleep now, carried by the quiet, and let the stars keep watch.